Hi, my name is Deepak Ramola. I'm a poet and an educator based in India. The word democracy actually comes from two Greek words, demos and kratias. So democracy as a word in its very virtue of truth means the power of people. I emphasize on that because my entire life, my career, and my way of thinking has been baselined by that philosophy. I started teaching at the age of 17 and ever since have put in people and their power at the center of every conversation. I had the chance to meet so many incredible people whose story I contributed to, and most of them told me something that pulled me out of the trenches to soar into newer experiences. When I look back, I think of very early on in my life. I found myself in a classroom in a city called Punjab here in India. It was a very thought-provoking time because there were 80 students in that class. I was doing the usual round of introductions, going from one student to tell their name, something about themselves, to another. And in that there was one student who had an injured eye. So when I reached him and requested him to introduce himself, even before he could say something, I saw that the boys in his class laughed at him. They started to call him names. And he, forgetting my question and a response to it, felt so furious and enraged that his face became red and he was ready to punch somebody. I noticed that. I took him by his hand onto the main stage and I made him stand in front of the entire class. I then asked him, everybody was perplexed by this point, and I asked him, "Do you study like everybody else?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Do you come to school on your own?" He said, "Yes." "Do you play a sport?" "Yes." "Do you sing?" He said, "No, I don't risk that." "Do you paint sometimes?" He said, "Yes, sometimes I do." So I turned to the class and I asked the exact same set of questions. "Do all of you study?" "Yes." "Do all of you play a sport?" "Yes." "Do all of you come to school?" "Yes, yes, yes," and a resounding yes for each of those questions. So I turned to the boy and said, "They do exactly what you do, but you do it with just one eye. Who's more talented?" And I saw the light bulb in his eyes lit up with the own realization of his potential and his value. And I thought to myself, wow, if we can provide that same power in our education system to every student, that they walk out of our schools with a narrative, a story that they can tell about themselves for the rest of their life, that becomes their go-to guide, their personal mantra, we would have given them a tool to not fall into the clutches of loneliness, apathy, bigotry, and self-hate. We would be able to do something for their well-being, truly. I know this because I have been saved by similar conversations. And that has made me realize that our education system, and most education systems that I have come across the world, still rely on traditional and conventional methods of teaching. However, the knowledge of contemporary life and its challenges require a more participative, a more innovative style and appreciation. And that is why it is important that we are able to constantly innovate and figure out ways in which we can provide holistic well-being, mental health support to our students. Because nobody really looks back at their educational, institutional life and says, "Oh, you remember that English teacher who helped me get full marks in my subject?" But we all stop on the street years later to admire a teacher who taught us the value of time. I think we do that because these teachers allow us to meet who we are rather than just what we can do. In 2018, in an effort to remake tomorrow, we launched one of our favorites, the Out of Syllabus project, under which we document the learnings of our school teachers and reimagine role models in them. What we do is basically we train a bunch of students in schools into a wisdom squad with 21st century skills of filmmaking, data documentation and design and interviewing. And then each of those students goes about interviewing every school staff for their story. And later, put it up in a magnificent way as a wisdom corridor in their entire school for generations and generations, year after year, to use that. It is imperative to participate and experiment with projects like these because our children need to have academic optimism and a connection with role models that they meet every day, not just the ones they see in popular culture on social media. I know that to be true because my mother taught me so. She was pulled out of school in grade 5 by her grandmother, and she never felt reduced by it. In fact, every time I told her or asked her about not, becoming illiterate, she said that life is itself the biggest classroom. She learned by the street smartness, the somersault of relationships, and her own experiences. And I think that allows for us to know that if she is learning simply by living, that means everyone who is living is learning something. I have spent the last 10 years of my life documenting human wisdom from all around the world and have based my entire career on a simple question by asking people, what is your life lesson? What has life taught you so far? Imagine, there are 7 billion people on planet Earth. How many of those 7 billion stories do you know? If you sit down to imagine each one of those 7 billion people on a Saturday evening, it can take decades. I think in the effort to find out what something else is there in education, the possibilities are immense, from deeper parental involvement to hands-on immersive learning to building of emotional skills. The insights and suggestions contributed by many people across the education sphere for the Remake Tomorrow campaign are phenomenal and revelatory. They teach us through the data derived from the themes and patterns of these suggestions that everybody wants for our children to learn how to hold space for each other. I think if we are able to treat and train our children into feeling comfortable in expressing themselves, in speaking their minds, in exploring their extracurricular talents, in their innate skills, this pressure of making something out of them will ease out. So we have to treat our students as our collaborators, not just as our beneficiaries. We have to stop treating them as empty vessels that have to be filled with information. Rather, they are maps full of discoveries, not differences. So, let's join hands and make a promise that we will contribute in remaking a tomorrow where we are not forcing our children or turning them into stars, but rather honoring them as constellations, full of wonder, dreams, possibilities, victories, failures, tales, surprises, and most importantly, faith. Faith that everyone has something to teach you if you are willing to learn and listen, always and in all ways. Thank you.